Okay, so now a6 by Carlsen, the signature move of the Najdorf variation. And guys, now Pragg goes for h4. He goes for the Tal variation, which indicates he wants a kingside attack right from the start. Okay, so h6 by Carlsen, slowing down the h-pawn, bishop to c4, e6. Magnus blunts the bishop diagonal and also opens the diagonal for his dark square bishop. a3, creating a hiding spot for the bishop if Carlsen goes for the b5 idea. And after that, knight to c6. And after that, here Carlsen goes for bishop to e7, getting ready to castle king side and tuck his king to safety. Queen to e2 by Pragg, and you can see he's preparing to castle queen side. And after that, h5, preparing for knight to g4 so that he can, target this active bishop which is defending the knight on d4. So to stop this, Pragg plays f3, completely shutting down that g4 square. Knight to e5, and you can see here Carlsen is planning a devastating pawn storm with b5, b4 and also with a5 and a4, and this bishop is also placed perfectly, eyeing the queen side. And finally Pragg commits to the castle long side, and after that Carlsen immediately placed his rook on the semi-open c file. And here Pragg decides to play bishop to g5. And guys, now the question is how black is going to continue the game. And I know some of you might be thinking about the move, which is the move b5, trying to expand on the queen side. But here Pragg has prepared something. I mean, now he's going to push f4, attacking the knight. And let's suppose if this knight goes to c4, now comes bishop takes c4, rook takes c4, and finally rook to d3. And in the end, you can see white can double the rooks on the d file, or he can push e5. There are multiple incoming threats which white is creating. Okay, so in the game after bishop to g5, okay, so let me go back. Here Carlsen doesn't go for the queenside expansion. Basically, in this position, he decides to sacrifice his rook by rook takes c3, completely disrupting the pawn structure of white king. And now obviously Pragg is forced to take back. Queen to a5, eyeing the weak pawn on c3 and the deadly a3 square. The pressure is immense on Pragg's king, so that's why he slid his king to b1. Queen takes a3, threatening to capture on c3 and trying to crash through the position. But here Pragg goes for f4, and now the question is where this knight can go. Here the best square for this knight is this c6 square, so that if white decides to exchange the knights, then black can bring this light square bishop to c6, which will be a perfect outpost for this bishop. And also this knight on c6 was stopping the move e5, which is going to rip apart the black position. But after the move f4, here Magnus brings his knight to g4, and now basically Pragg advances his e-pawn further, attacking the knight. And guys, just take a look at the domination of white pieces in the center. I mean, it's just crazy. Here Carlsen captures on e5, opening up the lines. But that's not the right way, guys, because so basically for black, here the best move for black is, for that I have to go back. So basically it is to go for the move knight to f2, attacking the rooks as well as sacrificing the knight. And basically the idea is after queen takes f2, and basically that will be now a huge blunder, because that's the main motive of black, which is to deflect the queen so that he can centralize the knight on e4, by knight to e4, so that he can target this queen as well as this weak pawn on c3. Okay, so to defend this, Obviously, queen to f3 is not going to work because of just knight takes c3 check. And obviously, king to a1 is not possible due to the threat of queen takes a2 mate. So that's why here white is forced to capture this with the queen, and after that queen takes c3, and yeah, that's all. Okay, so after the move, yeah, so let me go back. Yep. So basically in this position, here Pragg decides to capture on e5, and after that, since this knight is attacked, so Carlsen brings it on h7, putting some pressure over the bishop. So that's why queen to d2. And guys, now it's better to capture this bishop so that he can, remove this active piece. But instead, he decides to bring his knight back to f8. Basically, he wants to reroute this knight on g6, and that's an inaccuracy because, as you can see, this is too slow. Because now Pragg just defends with the knight to f3, and after that queen to c5. And you can see Carlsen is preparing for the same threat, which is knight to f2. So, but before that, bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and now comes knight to g5, preparing to swing the h1 rook to f1, so that you can see he can put some pressure over the f7 pawn. Knight to g6, targeting the e5 pawn, but knight to e4. Basically, he is preparing for knight to d6 check so that he can ruin the castling chance of black. So that's why knight takes e5. But obviously, knight to d6 check is incoming. So Carlsen just slides his king to f8, and after that, rook at h goes to f1. And now Pragg is, starting dead at the f7 pawn. Yeah, so basically he is staring at this pawn, and basically he's preparing an onslaught. So that's why here Carlsen brings the knight back to f6, blocking the f file. And since now there is no defender of this knight on e5, so that's why queen to d4. Pragg just targets the knight. So that's why knight at g goes to e4. And guys, here Pragg can now consider the move queen to b6, trying to infiltrate into the black position. But instead, he grabs the pawn on b7 with knight takes b7. But basically, this is a slight inaccuracy because this allows Carlsen to, create a counterplay, and he goes for bishop to b5. He targets the rook, and yes, white can defend this with the move like c4. But then bishop takes c4, bishop takes c4, queen takes b7 check, king to c1, king to g8, queen to d8 check, king to h7, queen to d3 check, and finally g6. And in the end, you can see black king is now safe behind its pawns. So that's why after bishop to b5, here Pragg gives a check from d8 square instead, and basically he is now forcing, so basically he wants a queen trade, but Carlsen just defends with a knight, and after that finally he just exchanges the queen. And now basically Pragg goes for rook to d8, and you can see he wants to swing the rook to a8 so that he can target the a6 pawn, and also he can push his c pawn down to the board like a bulldozer. But guys, black can now here play so basically he can play a tactical move in which he is going to get a piece. Just pause the video and try to find it by yourself. And if you find the move bishop takes c2 check, then congrats, you are a genius. The idea is after king takes c2, can you guess the next move? I think most of you got the move, yes, which is knight to e3 check. And white has to lose his rook. But surprisingly, after rook to d8, so basically Carlsen misses this and he goes for bishop to c6. He just wants to grab this, so basically he wants to grab this knight so that in the next move he can grab this rook. But yeah, so basically that's not a good move, guys, because the problem is, as you can see, white can easily tackle this with the move. Can you guess the move? Which is rook at f goes to d1, because even if bishop takes b7 happens, just rook at 1 goes to d7 check, and after king moves, just rook takes b7, and in the end you can see white rooks would absolutely dominates the 7th and 8th ranks, hunting the black king mercilessly. But after bishop to c6, yeah, let me go back. Yeah, so basically here Pragg misses this and he goes for rook to f8, rook to b8. He goes for the defense of the bishop, but after that Magnus grabs the pawn, and you can see now this position is equal. Yeah, so basically Pragg is slightly better, but Carlsen manages to equalize the position. But after bishop to f3, rook to g3, here Pragg attacks the bishop, so knight to e5. He defends with the knight, and after that Pragg pushes the c pawn, and you can see the passed pawn is rolling g5. And guys, what a move. I mean, he just wants to deflect the h pawn so that he can create his own passer. Okay, so here Pragg goes for now knight to d6, which is a mistake, allowing Carlsen to advance his g pawn further, making a rock solid pawn structure for black. Okay, so since now Pragg is giving a check, so king to f6, and you can see here Carlsen is actively improving his king in the end game. Knight to d6. Pragg repositioned the knight, creating the pressure over the knight on e8. So to defend this, bishop to c6 might be the best option, which as you can see. But surprisingly, Carlsen decides to give up his rook with knight takes d6. Yeah, so after rook takes h8, and guys, basically Carlsen did all of this because he believes that his kingside pawns, or we can say his kingside structure, are much more stronger. And also you can see his both knights are just rock and solid. Okay, so first of all he brings his knight to e4, attacking the rook. So that's why Pragg defends it with the rook to g1, and after that he gives a check from c3 square, so king to b2, attacking the knight. So knight to e2, attacking the rook, so rook to f1, getting out from the attack. And guys, now Carlsen made a fatal mistake with g3. But why this move is a mistake? I mean, as you can see, black g pawn is now close to promotion, and for that it's just 2 steps away, as you can see. And guys, this is the most important part of this game, so watch this video carefully. Okay, so as I said, black wants to push, but there is a move which white can play, and which is rook to g8, keeping an eye over the g pawn. And if g2, just pause the video and try to guess the next move which white can play in this position. And guys, the move is to sacrifice the rook by rook takes g2, because obviously black cannot capture this rook due to the pin. So instead of instead of the move g3, okay, so as you can see here, the best move for black is to consider the move which is knight to f4, with the same idea of pushing the g pawn. But now on so as you can see, now on g2 there is a defender which is the knight on f4. So basically now there are 2 defenders of the g2 square, so now black can easily push his g pawn without any issue. But in the actual game, after the move g3, Pragg misses the move which is the rook to g8, and he goes for c6, and basically now he loses all of his advantage with this move. I mean, now black is going to push, can you guess the move? g2, attacking the rook as well as threatening to promote. But now you will say that if black is close to promotion, then why this eval bar is showing this position equal? And guys, the reason is here white has a way to save this game. I mean, in this position, the only move is only move for white is to sacrifice the rook with rook takes f3 check, because if he captured the rook, now rook to g8, keeping an eye over the pawn, and if he promotes, then rook takes g1, knight takes g1, and c7. And now you can see there is no one who can stop this promotion. But surprisingly, after the move c6, Pragg goes for king to g7. Yes, basically Carlsen goes for king to g7. He targets the rook, and after that Pragg goes for c7. And since he's now just one step away from promotion, so Carlsen tries to stop it with bishop to b7, but rook to b8, and in this position Carlsen plays the final move, which is g2, and here he resigned, because this position is completely losing for black, because let's suppose after rook to d1, even if black promotes to a queen, rook takes g1 check, knight takes g1, rook takes b7, and now just tell me, who is going to stop this pawn from promotion? No one. Like this video, and I will see you in the next one. This is your host Bison signing off. Bye bye.